I had a discussion with a conservative senator who believes evil should be opposed, not accommodated. His name is Senator Ron Johnson. Here's how the conversation went. Folks, when I bring in conservative Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson. Sir, it is always fantastic to see you. You had a very strong reaction to Tucker Carlson parting ways over there at Fox News. Quote, Tucker Carlson has been engaging in the best journalism on TV, uncovering and exposing the truth. This is a huge loss to Fox News. Senator, to that point, now that Fox News has abandoned their fair and balanced brand that they built themselves on, how concerned are you that now Fox is going to be a home to senators who don't have your conservative mindset, the senators and Republican members of Congress who say, we just need to meet the socialists and the Marxists halfway?
Well, listen, I think as is the case with Newsmax, Fox has a number of different hosts. They're all somewhat different. They're generally conservative. So I don't have a great deal of concern that Fox will completely lose its way. But I just think the loss of Tucker Carlson is a huge one for Fox. It might be Newsmax's or somebody else's gain. And I think it's just true that I don't think any other host on cable TV had done a better job of researching and uncovering and reporting true stories, things that I was not aware of. You know, I would tune in as often as I possibly could to find out, you know, what new piece of information, what new piece of journalism had Tucker and his research staff uncovered. So, you know, he's not going away, fortunately, but I just think that's a huge loss for Fox News.
Yeah, and one of the big pushes he had was destroying this, what I call narrative over news, in particular as it surrounds the January 6th goings-on, the riot that many are saying was a tantamount to an insurrection, which we may get into here in the course of our conversation. Senator, in the meantime, you've been calling for Secretary of State Antony Blinken to step down or be impeached over his role in that letter that falsely labeled Hunter Biden's laptop as Russian disinformation. President Trump went a step further, telling that those crafting the letter should be charged with treason. Listen.
Just before the election, right before the vote, they lied and they said that the computer, which had all crimes on it, was Russian disinformation. 51 top people, the top people in the country, they lied. I actually think it's treasonous.
Well, Senator, I've been saying since the beginning, since I heard this, at the very least, those involved who still have their security clearances ought to have them immediately revoked. And then, of course, then you heard the president saying it ought to go a step further. Where are you on this?
Listen, I would agree, revoke their security clearances, make sure they never serve in government again. This was such a egregious fraud, an egregious breach of public confidence. And, you know, if you go back to the Russian collusion hoax, and the claims by Democrats that Russia helped steal the election from Hillary Clinton, it was a complete fantasy. It was a complete hoax. It was a false narrative. This was way worse than that. I mean, those individuals, Mike Morrell, Anthony Blinken, those 51 intelligence officials, they interfered in our election to a far greater extent than anything Russia or China ever could hope to accomplish. And, you know, that's been the drumbeat of the left. It just hasn't been true that Russia interfered and tipped the scales in 2016. They interfered and they did tip the scales. We have plenty of polls that had the American public known, if they would have paid attention to Senator Grassley's and my report, if they knew about the Hunter Biden laptop, Joe Biden would not be president and our nation would not be headed down the path to destruction that the Biden administration has put us on.
No, I'm right there with you. And you know what? I got to say, their election interference, they will tell you with a straight face, when we interfere with the elections on behalf of left-wing extremism, oh, that's the good kind of election interference. Election interference that leads to us not being in power, that's the bad election interference. We've seen a lot of whistleblowers coming forward recently. And as you mentioned, you and Senator Chuck Grassley have been on the forefront of this in revealing that some of them, a lot of them, are being silenced, submitting this NDA. FBI agents are being forced to sign this. You point out in your letter that this is illegal. How long has this been going on? How long has our government been forcing our government employees to cover up for government malfeasance?
We don't know. And so we'll need more whistleblowers who might have that answer to come forward and tell us, because the agencies won't volunteer the information. Congressional oversight is a mere shadow of what it might have been in the past, because the administrations would realize that Congress has no enforcement powers. Certainly not when one party that is being investigated is in the White House and controls the Department of Justice. And so the American public do not get the information that they deserve from these administrations. It's an egregious abuse of power, and something that we need more whistleblowers to come forward so we can expose it for the public.
Right, and I'm hoping that at least the folks over there in the House exercise their power to defund a government that is operating against the best interests of we the people, and by the way, outside the law. And yesterday we spoke in this program to Congressman Eric Burleson of Missouri. He sits on the House Oversight Committee and has viewed IRS documents relating to the Biden family. We asked him about the allegations that Hunter Biden was involved in human trafficking. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene is leveling those accusations, and here's what he told us.
Just to give everyone an idea of how this is working is we have to go into the Treasury Department, and our staff have to go into the Treasury Department. We're only given certain hours of the day, and we don't get to just make copies of what we see. We have to use a pencil, pen, notes, notepad, and take information down as we see it, which makes this a painstaking process.
All right. Now, you serve on the Senate Subcommittee on Taxation and IRS Oversight. First off, have you seen these documents or any evidence to support the allegations leveled by Marjorie Taylor Greene and others? And what do you make of the Treasury Department, Senator, protecting Democrats, not allowing the American people to see the evidence of this malfeasance to protect their reputation? What gives?
Well, Senator Grassley and I had access to those Treasury reports through the end of 2019. In our report, we talk about the international sex trafficking rings that Hunter Biden had paid tens of thousands of dollars into. It was interesting, over, I think, a 4 or 5 month time period, he literally paid tens of thousands of dollars to these women who are obviously sex trafficked. And this is the same time when then Vice President Biden, or actually former Vice President Biden, before he became president, offered to pay $100,000 of Hunter Biden's expenses, in effect, potentially funding his sex habit with trafficked women. So this was in our report in September of 2020, which the mainstream media accused Senator Grassley and I of soliciting and disseminating Russian disinformation. Again, these were U.S. Treasury records. But what's interesting, Chris, is now the House is getting subsequent Treasury records. The Bidens knew they were being investigated, and yet they continued their grifts. They continued their influence peddling. Now we know 6 additional Biden family members cashed in on the grift. That's how brazen they are, how much they can count on the mainstream media to basically ignore their wrongdoing, as well as certainly the Justice Department under Merrick Garland.
Right, and Treasury Department running interference for them. Actually, a lot of departments in the federal government running interference for what many of us would consider to be illegal operations. Last question I have for you, Senator. Joe Biden made this announcement on the same day he announced his re-election bid. He said this about our children.
Rebecca put a teacher's creed into words when she said, "There's no such thing as someone else's child. No such thing as someone else's child. Our nation's children are all our children."
Okay. Senator, of course, as you know, you can recognize the verbiage that is straight out of Soviet doctrine, out of communist doctrine. And not to put too fine a point on this, Senator, because this really angers me, Joe Biden messed up his own kids. He can't have mine. What do you say to him?
Well, take a look at what the radical left is doing to all of our children. They're pushing these ideas of transgenderism on them. They're offering them gender-blocking drugs without telling their parents. This is a tragedy that's occurring in this country, a travesty, and it's got to end. But the good news here is we can gain control over our school boards at a local level. You don't have to look to the federal government to solve these problems. You can solve these problems in your own community, and I'm begging and urging parents to do so.
Senator Ron Johnson, I want to thank you, sir, for not giving up in the fight, standing up for our American principles out there. So many have not done so. Thank you, sir.